A majority of exit polls have forecast a victory for the BJP in Delhi. And if that happens, the BJP will be returning to power in Delhi after a gap of 27 years. But there is one polling agency, C Voter, that has opted to not do a seat or a vote share projection overall. Instead, it has gone granular with its data, looking at different voting communities to try and understand the mind of the voter. In a moment from now, we'll be talking to Yashwant Deshmukh of Sea Voter. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. Ahead of the actual result day, the question is this: can Modi's BJP basically dislodge the Aam Aadmi Party and Arvind Kejriwal? Exit polls that have chosen to do a seat and vote share projection are arguing that yes, that is indeed going to be the case. Even those among them that predict a close fight are giving the advantage and the edge to the BJP. But one pollster, C Voter, has opted to go a different route this time. They've actually gone much more granular, doing a deep dive post poll into who voted for whom. When we break the data down by gender, by income, by caste group, by age groups, what do we understand about how Delhi may have voted? What do we understand about how politics may be shifting or not shifting? To talk about what C Voter found, let me welcome back to the program Yashwant Deshmukh, who's, of course, somebody we always love to have on our shows and learn from. Yashwant, let me start by asking you before we bring the first slide up. Why did you decide this time to not really do a typical seat and vote share overall projection?
Well, Barkha, this is what something which we have been advocating for long. I mean, even on your shows, I've always said that, the seat share projection is nothing but an extrapolation of the vote share. Survey science just stops at the understanding who is voting where, what the issues, and broadly speaking, the vote share calculation. Beyond that, the seat extrapolation is not really part of the survey science. We have been doing it. I mean, mea culpa in that way, because I have been part of the media and it was good fun. But then over a period of time, we have been saying that, it is just taking away the gravitas of the data. People are so hyper focused in the probable seats that it sounded more like a satta than the real academic exercise of understanding why people are voting. So results, in any case, we will get in next 12, 14 hours, we will know who is getting how many seats. But the thing is, research is going to tell you why is that result coming. So that is something which we wanted to focus on. We have been advocating this for long, but then last year we decided that it's high time we just start doing it rather than expecting the media and other colleagues to take a decision on this. Somebody has to start, so we thought that, okay, this is it. We are starting it. We might face the financial pinch because of that, but that's the price of doing good research, then let it be.
Well done. I think at least it will lead to exit polls being taken more seriously. And I think that's the point, that, as you said, it was beginning to feel more like a satta than an actual polling exercise. Let's start with the first data point that you look at. It's a very interesting question. If you break down the data by gender, if you look at whether men and women voted differently, the C Voter post poll finds a very, very interesting outcome here. And I want you to explain the numbers that we see. Effectively, if I had to make it very simple, more men favor BJP and more women favor Aam Aadmi Party.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about
when we discussed this last time in our tracker data, we discussed that among the males, the BJP has not only punched up the gap, but actually gone ahead of the Aam Aadmi Party. But Aam Aadmi Party is still managing their lead in the female voters. What has done the trick for the BJP? It seems that they have turned around in the last 72 hours prior to the poll, after the budget declaration. The complete middle class kind of swung in that way, and BJP took the lead. Now, in a layman term, sometimes people say, what's the problem in looking at the overall vote share? Because you can take an average male, female, and that's where you get the entire vote share. No, it doesn't work that way, because there are not 50-50 voters in male and female. In Delhi, out of every 100 voters, 54 are male and only 46 are female. And in the recent past, we have seen in many states, the female turnout has been more than the male turnout. So it's a bit complicated. What I can tell you, I mean, as per my information, which I have last received, I still have to confirm that, but there is no stark contrast of male and female turnouts in Delhi. It is almost at par with each other. So one, if that is the case, then just purely because there are 54 out of 100 male voters in Delhi, BJP is likely to see 3-4 point lead in the overall vote share over the Aam Aadmi Party. That's what the conventional way of looking at, if at all, the turnout of male and female are in the same proportion, same ratio in Delhi.
So effectively, what you're saying is that since women and men don't turn out to vote in the same numbers, you can't actually aggregate the overall vote projection from these numbers. But you do believe that more men have voted for the BJP, more women have voted for the AAP. But that's not necessarily great news for the AAP because there are many more male voters in Delhi.
Exactly, there are many more male voters than the female voters in Delhi, and yeah, I mean that's how it looks like, and this is why I can sense that bigger number of other colleagues who have predicted a kind of 8, 9, 10% lead for the BJP probably have been taken away with the fact that in polling, Barkha, that's a problem of the operations. Generally, the female response rate is low, so lesser number of females are covered in the sample size by almost all the pollsters. So yeah. I don't blame them. That's a professional hazard that everybody carries. But even in the most conservative way, it seems like BJP has by virtue of turning the middle class towards them, particularly middle class male voters, and Delhi has a significantly lot number of middle class. I mean, compared to other cities or other states, seems that they are on the verge of getting to something which they have been trying to for 27 years.
Very interesting. And let's turn to how people voted by income. As we bring up the next slide, you already spoke about how the budget, a post-budget bump may have helped the BJP. This election could have actually turned in the last 72 hours. Now, take a look at the C-voter finding on income-wise voters. Now, if you look at this, basically those earning above 1 lakh, right? Look at that last figure. That's the one that really captures my eye.
Last one and two both. More than 50K actually. Yeah, last one and two. It's very clear.
So that's where the BJP is getting its bump. Because in the other income groups, the lower income groups, it's up with the advantage. And as you go higher up the chain, it is the BJP with the advantage, which you are linking in some ways to the budget, to the tax relief, to the general satisfaction with the budget. Are you making that kind of linear connection?
Yeah, there is a very direct linear connection. It's a class divide, Barkha. I mean, if you look into the low income groups and the middle income and the higher income groups, as the income grows up, the support for the BJP goes up. Now, that is something which is not really unheard of. All along, we have been finding BJP, traditionally has been getting more of the middle class and upper income group voters, but not in case of Delhi. In case of Delhi, in the last two assembly elections, Barkha, Aam Aadmi Party was actually having a substantial lead across all the sections. It wasn't that, they had a much more uniform support base across different profiles and like that. But compare this to 5 years back, I mean, particularly in the middle class, upper middle class and higher income groups, this has turned around. Big time it is a turnaround. And I guess that has a lot to do with multiple things actually. But if at all BJP manages to win tomorrow, probably it will go down as a case study. Forget about late swing in 4 weeks and 12 weeks and kind of thing. Basically, a late swing in the last 4 days will become a new thing to watch out for. Because you remember when we used to cover election in the much more traditional way, we used to look into 4.5 साल ऐसे गए और लास्ट के 6 महीने, लास्ट के 3 महीने, लास्ट के 1 महीने में खेल पलट गया, But even the late swing, we used to talk about last ka 1 mahina. Now, this is beyond that. It is something which has happened in the last 72 hours. This is a typical post-budget bump. Now, we did ask Barkha, all the voters, those who are voting for AAP or against AAP, about the reason why exactly they have gone for or against Aam Aadmi Party. Now, those who are voting for the BJP, biggest chunk actually came for the Prime Minister Modi and central government. That is obviously the budget thing. I mean,
Yeah.
that is something which goes without saying. Second biggest chunk of the number of the angry voter or the non-AAP voters was almost 20 out of 100 said that Aam Aadmi Party is no more the party that it was supposed to be, or it said it.
Hmm.
So obviously, the controversies of Sheesh Mahal and other things have hurt them. But
Yeah.
uh, but as we know, Aam Aadmi Party, where it lost that massive chunk of middle class voters, they somehow managed to hold on to their core low income group, bottom of the pyramid, lower strata of the society vote bank.
Hmm.
And that is why, if you look into all the exit poll vote shares that came across yesterday, not a single one has taken Aam Aadmi Party vote share below 40%. You
Yeah.
know, even in their assessment, you look across everything. I mean, I mean, everybody is 40% plus, 41, 42,
Yeah, but
43.
the problem is that that's still more than a 10% drop in their vote share
It
from
is.
the last election. And
Exactly.
that drop is enough to change the outcome of the election if that happens.
Absolutely, and that drop is very, very significant. I think that drop is more than what Aam Aadmi Party was anticipating. That drop should have been 5% if there was no budget in sight. If there was no middle class friendly budget would not have in place, then probably that drop would have been 5%. It is 10% because of the union budget
But
in place.
but I have a question here. If on one of our earlier shows you said when we were looking at the C voter tracker, you said that it all comes down to the turnout now. Which party is able to get their vote out? Now you're making 2 points. One, you feel that while Aam Aadmi Party has held on to its low income support base, basically up the chain as you go towards middle class and upper middle class, there's a kind of disillusionment with the Aam Aadmi Party, and that's where the Aam Aadmi Party may have lost out. But what we don't know is what the turnout is telling us, right? It's a couple of points different from last year's turnout. Uske demographics, us turnout ke demographics, we don't know. We don't know how many women
We
came
can
to vote.
only get from the
Hmm.
data we can understand that, I mean, the proportion of the middle class among the final voters is way higher than the proportion of the upper middle class was coming out to be in our tracker. Like, for example, I just want this to be discussed because of a
Hmm.
reason. We
Yeah.
do ask our voters in all our trackers that, on a 0 to 10 scale, how likely are you to go out and vote? There are different things why people do not vote. What is the reason for you to not vote?
Yeah.
Basically, if you world over, Barkha, that's a funny thing in survey science. When you ask people whom you are going to vote for, almost more than 95% people say they are going to vote certain other, but not 95% people go out and vote. So
Hmm.
obviously, you have to, segregate the what we call in US in our survey as likely voter, LV, rather than RV, which is called registered voters.
Hmm.
That kind of distinction has to be made. So that
Hmm.
those distinctions are made about asking different ways of turnout, that how likely a person is to go out and vote. So when we looked into the highly likely voting strata of Delhi, the proportion of the middle class was less and proportion of the low income group was much higher in terms of intent, actual intent to vote. But in actual voting, yesterday we found that that
Hmm.
proportion of the middle class actually bolstered significantly. And that bolstering of that turnout is directly attributed to the budget, union budget, and that kind of enthusiasm that came in. There was anger with middle class, with Arvind Kejriwal, but that anger was not directly getting translated into a turnout for the BJP, but the budget ensured that. So this is where it stands. Look at the screen right now. I mean, you have the occupation-wise vote share, and you'll realize that the general label, again, the housewives, they are the core at the Aam Aadmi Party vote bank. The moment you go into the service class, look at the self-employed, look at the government service class. Now, government service was the one vote bank which Aam Aadmi Party tapped into big time when they won for the first time in 2013 and 15. They have turned their backs to Aam Aadmi Party. So middle class has turned their back, and I guess that the strategists of Aam Aadmi Party, they did realize this almost a year back, I guess so, because since then the way they have been conducting themselves, they felt like जो चला गया उसको जाने दो, जो है उस पे फोकस करो. So they went full Monty as far as your freebie schemes and other schemes, and so much so that they actually forced the BJP to come and play on their pitch on the freebies and reveries. So,
Yeah.
so I mean, credit where due, where the kind of politics they play. But the 10 the assumed the potential 10% loss of vote, that if it would have been only 5%, they would have been sitting pretty. But BJP, with its meticulous planning, it seems that they have hemorrhaged Aam Aadmi Party more than what Aam Aadmi Party could have probably managed itself the hemorrhage to.
Yeah. Today, Arvind Kejriwal is, or not today, since yesterday, he's been talking about how there's an attempt at a new, what he calls Operation Lotus, to break away his people. Will the Aam Aadmi Party be vulnerable if it's a tight outcome? I think that's something to consider.
Well, looking at the recent history, the way the BJP is known to basically get into power in such cases, the vulnerability will always remain there. I cannot help but say that if Aam Aadmi Party gets below 40 seats, if it is like a 36 kind of a number, if they get, then the vulnerability will be always there. There is only one way that AAP can think of having a good stable government, that is getting more than 40 seats. If they win 40 plus,
so AAP has to cross 40 seats for it to kind of band together or to hold itself.
If it is a close call, then it's a difficult task for Aam Aadmi Party then in that case to form, because BJP has a very ruthless machinery, electoral machinery. Ruthless in the sense they have a hunger to win, and they have a hunger to go for it. If they smell blood, they go for the jugular. It's like that. And the numbers, the way we are looking at in the tracker, the way they have taken this number shot up in the last few months, and finally in the last 3 days, that tells us a lot. I mean, how they proceed in the surgical manner they go for any electoral strategy.
Yeah. So let me, one of the interesting comments from our viewer, Prasad, says Barkha Kejriwal was smart enough to identify the budget risk, and so he demanded 10 lakhs should be made the tax exemption limit. Let's remember Arvind Kejriwal was a former IRS officer, but the BJP checkmated him with a 12 lakh limit. So exactly. I think that's an interesting point.
That's right? Exactly. And yeah, that's a very legit and very valid comment from your viewer.
Yeah.
That's precisely what has happened.
Yeah, let's look at one of your last slides, which is the social background, and if you look at this either through religion or even caste groups, this makes for a very, very interesting story in terms of the profile that the contenders are building up. And also, we haven't mentioned the word Congress in the whole discussion, but this time it may finally come up, because one of the interesting things, so look at this, we have more Dalit Hindus voting for the Aam Aadmi Party, and we have more upper caste Hindus voting for the BJP. We have more OBC Hindus voting for the BJP, and we have more Muslims voting for the Aam Aadmi Party than for the Congress Party. I just picked up some of those data points looking at this slide. I'll ask you to decode the rest of it for us.
Well, the Dalit, the Muslim, the Sikh, I mean, as I said, Jhuggi Jhopadi, low income, lower strata of that spectrum. That is what has kind of gone with Aam Aadmi Party. They should feel happy about it, but all happiness has to be seen in a context. All these vote shares were almost 10 point up 5 years back. Dalits were in the 50s, Muslims were in the 70s, Sikhs were in the 60s. So that is something which they need to worry about. Their drop is not just in one caste group or one particular thing. Middle class is a very weird thing. Middle class is a jati in itself. They behave in their own way. It's a very, very, amalgamated thing to stuff. A middle class SC and a middle class OBC and a middle class Muslim is likely to think or behave in the same way.
Yeah.
Of their caste related voting intents and behavior.
Yeah.
So that drop of 10% is cutting across all everything, and that is largely because of middle class. As I mentioned earlier, if it was a drop of 5%, they would still be sitting pretty. All these ifs and buts and question marks are coming because we are looking at a drop of 10%, and that is what making them uncomfortable, hugely
Well,
uncomfortable.
how do you explain this 12.7% Muslims for BJP?
Well, that's a question everybody is asking me, and it's not a new trend, Bakha. If you look into the CSDS data, our data, or other pollsters' data, means or serious pollsters' data, you will realize that Muslim 1 or 2 or 3 out of 100 used to be there 10, 15 years back. In the last 10 years, particularly every election cycle, we have seen this number grow. As the BJP's opponent would call that Sarkari Muslim, I would say, I hate to say that, I don't use the term. I have strong objection to that. I mean, if a Muslim voting for BJP is a Sarkari Muslim, then Hindu voting for opposition is a Sarkari Hindu, or what? I mean, let's just leave it that. But Muslims in each election cycles, we are looking at it, and there are states, Barkha, where we have seen and we have reported BJP actually polled like every fourth, every third, 30%, 30% in Gujarat. You remember we discussed about that Muslims
Yeah.
voted for the BJP in Gujarat, and so many other states there. Their numbers are almost touching 20% out of 20-25%. So there is a reason, and there is a class in that Muslim, basically the Shia Muslim, the Paspanda Muslims, they form a chunk of the newfound BJP votes over there. Now, don't get confused with that. Oh, okay, Muslims are voting for the BJP. No, overwhelming majority of the Muslims is still voting for the best possible alternative which can defeat the BJP. But however, it is not that stereotypical Muslim vote bank anymore. There are sections and sections of that bloc which, for various number of reasons, have started looking for other alternatives, including the BJP, and that is something which is interesting. I have been, ever since we did these numbers, so oddly enough, I figured out that in social media, big time, many hardline BJP supporters have been criticizing that number. And I am oddly enough understanding what is your problem if the data is suggesting that Muslims have started voting for you. Because they have a problem because it's not fitting in their stereotype. So forget about opposition. Even some of the BJP supporters are kind of they are
That's so funny.
on social media. Why the hell are you saying that Muslims are voting for BJP? Well, if
That's what they did.
have said that they voted for BJP, our job is to report that they have voted for the BJP.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's hilarious. Now, in the end, I want you to reconcile this with what your tracker found on the popularity of Arvind Kejriwal as a chief ministerial contender. This we saw happen in Maharashtra also, right? There was a sense that Uddhav Thackeray was a popular face compared to the others. In Delhi, that gap was much wider because I think between Mr. Kejriwal and who's the next person, Manoj Tiwari. No, not this. I need the most preferred CM candidate, please. Yeah. I don't know why this graphic has been taken, but I assume the next one will come up soon. My question to you is, how do you reconcile the popularity these numbers seem to suggest for Kejriwal ahead of other BJP contenders with what we now think may well happen tomorrow on results day?
Well, number one, that if you add in Kejriwal's number, Atishi's number, and Manish Sudhia's number, they come to around 43%. But this number of Arvind Kejriwal alone was 50% plus 5 years back. So that's a direct drop of 10% in his personal popularity, and that's a direct drop of 10% in the potential vote of Aam Aadmi Party as well. Manoj Tiwari at around 20%, less than 20%. That's largely because BJP has not given any name. And BJP strategists feel that, they won Odisha even without giving a name against a super popular chief minister like Naveen Babu, which worked. It might work for the BJP again. That's one thing. And I feel for Ajay Maken because last 4 years, he was the guy who was running the campaign against Kejriwal on the liquor scam and on the all other things, only for getting into a tie-up during the Lok Sabha election, and that is where they squandered all whatever they did for the last 4 years. Actually, their hard work went on a platter to the BJP. As far as the image of Aam Aadmi Party and anti-corruption crusader that going down, that dismantling was actually done by the Ajay Makan brigade in the Congress, but it came in handy for the BJP eventually. And that's for Congress to blame themselves for their strategy. But Kejriwal, around 40%, number one, right, but it's not more the same one-sided. 5 years back, his numbers were 56 or 57%. It was a huge one-way traffic as far as the chief ministerial choice was concerned. Still, it is the number one number, and if at all they could poll, they could restrict the damage to 5% instead of 10%. I guess that they would be very much in play tomorrow. But if the damage goes to 10%, then it would be all curtains to Aam Aadmi Party.
Yeah, it all depends on what that scale of drop is. Before we let you go, there's been some reporting that Arvind Kejriwal is actually facing a spirited fight in his own seat. It's a triangular fight with Sandeep Dixit among those who's taking him on. What is your tracker picking up if you've looked at individual seats at all? And where might a result where the BJP does come back to power, it's curtains for AAP, where does that leave Congress?
Well, I don't think. Congress should be very, very lucky if it opens the account tomorrow. That's how it is. But I think they were contesting mostly for the fact that they could just play their role in defeating Aam Aadmi Party in order to kick-start their reconstruction in Delhi all over again. And that is something which even Shiraji used to say, that first they have to defeat the Aam Aadmi Party. And I agree with that, but they should not have gone with AAP in the Lok Sabha to say it in that way. So tomorrow, watch it out. I believe that if the turnout of male and female is the same, that BJP should be having a significant lead of at least 4 points over Aam Aadmi Party. That should take them through. I cannot offer any single individual seat, Barkha, because we did not do enough sample on individual seats to come up with that kind of projection. So I will not offer that. But looking at the secular drop across the board, one can imagine that even Kejriwal's seat, the drop will be there. You will see a drop, even if he wins his own seat, you will see a drop in his margins getting slashed significantly. That's what is likely to happen. That's what you are going to see.
Well, I will only say that what was feeling as a Delhi Wali, as a very Phika sort of election, has suddenly become very interesting in the last mile. Yashwant, thank you as ever, and see you tomorrow afternoon when the actual results are before us. Look forward
After
to
a long time, we are going to have an election where, there is some fun. Because otherwise, it's been 5 elections one way or the other. 7-0, 7-0, 7-0, 67, 3, 62, 8. Now there is a contest. Everybody loves a contest. That's what.
Absolutely. Thank you, Yashwant, and see you tomorrow. Thank you.
See you tomorrow, Barkha. Bye-bye.
Bye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.